Divorces are spiking during the coronavirus pandemic, up 34%, and newlyweds are the hardest hit. We'll talk about it with Rocket Years author and our co-host today, Liz Segran. It is Wednesday, October 14th. Let's talk money with our friends. Welcome to the Money with Friends podcast. I am certified financial planner, Bobbi Rebell, host of the Financial Grownup podcast, coming to you from my very grown-up kitchen in New York City.
Hi, I'm Liz Segran. I am the author of The Rocket Years, How Your 20s Launch the Rest of Your Life. And I'm also a staff writer at Fast Company magazine. And I'm coming to you from my my attic home office here right outside Boston.
With professional lighting. You have an amazing setup, Liz. So everyone should definitely be joining us on YouTube to see what a great setup you have. You look amazing in your pink blazer, all the good stuff. All right, let's get back to the open. Here on Money with Friends, we talk about the latest personal finance headlines and the insights. We add in the insights and wisdom of our fantastic cast of thought leaders like Rocket Years author Liz Segran. And we mix in questions and comments from our money friends and leave you with a takeaway to make it your own. Liz, welcome back. We had an amazing first show on Tuesday, and we're so happy to have you with us again.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you're the author of The Rocket Years, which we did talk about on Tuesday's show. So now let's pivot a little bit and talk about the work you do now. I mean, you're a staff writer, senior staff writer at Fast Company. You also write for other magazines, other publications, and so on. And one topic that really interests you is how the coronavirus has impacted and financially impacted relationships.
Yes, that's right. I'm actually working on a story about dating during the pandemic. And that's made me think a lot about, relationships more broadly and the span of relationships. One thing that has been clear in my reporting is that it is actually very hard for a lot of people to date right now, for obvious reasons. But I think the overarching thing that has come out of all, the reporting that I've done and all the people that I've spoken to is that dating is just slower now, and it just takes a lot longer to get to know somebody because you can't meet quickly, right? So you have to do all of these dates online, and you're texting for a long time, and then when you eventually take the risk of meeting in person, that might not work out. Like there are a lot of people who, when they actually meet in person, they realize that they're not really that compatible, right? One person said, I just didn't like how this other person smelled, like something as basic as pheromones, for instance, right? And so that's interesting. It was interesting to me because this is going to have a ripple effect on people's lives. Because if this is a 2-year period, for instance, or a year and a half, where people aren't able to date the way that they would like, it's possible that it will also push ahead, right, a lot of the other things that they're trying to do, like get married and start families. So we're seeing that on the beginning part of the relationship, this is having ripple effects. But then, on the other hand, the people who are already in relationships, as we're seeing with these headlines, are having other struggles where it's just very, very hard to be dealing with all the stress that we're dealing with and living in such close quarters and with no ways to meet other people or get out. This is putting a lot of pressure on relationships in every possible way.
Very well said. Hold that thought. Let's see which one of our friends is going to lead us into today's headline. All right, so the headline we're going to discuss is actually from the New York Post. It is by Elizabeth Rosner. The headline is U.S. divorce rates skyrocket amid COVID-19 pandemic. Divorce rates have spiked during the coronavirus pandemic. The number of people looking for divorces was up 34% March through June compared to 2019, according to new data collected from legal templates. The combination of stress, unemployment, financial strain, death of loved ones, illness, it just goes on and on, homeschooling children, mental illness, and more has put a significant strain on relationships. They also found that newlyweds took the hardest hit. 20% of couples who sought divorce who were married within the past 5 months or less, doubling the rate of the previous year. And the number of life insurance policies and payouts required in divorce settlements soared as well. And I wanted to mention that because there's a cost to this. Divorce is not cheap. I mean, people talk about the wedding industry. I mean, the divorce business. Oh my goodness.
It is expensive. And I think that there's just a lot of costs at every stage of this, right? I mean, we're talking about like moving in together and then moving out again, consolidating all of your stuff and then like separating all of that. It has to do with things like, making all of these plans, right, to, about your joint income that suddenly you don't work anymore when you're a single person. And the unemployment thing, I think, is really huge. There are a lot of people who are dealing with issues surrounding their jobs, right? Whether they're getting pay cuts, some people are unfortunately getting laid off. And so really, this is a time when being in an economy of scale with another person is just so valuable and helpful to getting through this period. And not having that, it just makes it that much harder, right? You're less resourced. So I think this is really tragic and sad, but also like hugely relatable. I mean, I am married. I have a child who's 4. We all feel like we're going crazy many days, so I totally get it.
Yeah. I mean, look, just in between recordings here today, I've had my son come out, and it's a school holiday. He doesn't need his stuff, but he came out and was interrupting me, and I'm saying, I am working, and he doesn't really understand that because here I am right in our living room, dining room, kitchen area. So he doesn't necessarily see the boundaries, and it's really hard to have this blending of your work and your life and your, not only your romantic relationships, but your parenting relationships, because there's no boundaries and you're together all the time, that it's really putting so much stress on these relationships. I mean, 34%, that's a lot.
Well, and another thing that has come up through all of my reporting about relationships is that, we're all also dealing with a lot of ambient stress that was not even there before. I mean, relationships have always been hard. Parenting has always been hard. Now we're doing it in a confined space, and that's one level of stress, which is horrible and terrible. But then there's also just like the ambient stress, right, of reading the newspaper every day, just trying to get through everyday life. Is just really hard. And so I just think that many of us just don't have a fuse. Our fuse is very short right now, right? And like, we're just kind of not able to deal with all of this anxiety and all of this stress. And it's just coming out in the way that we're treating the people that we love the most, our significant others. And I also think that, I think that it was always, actually the first couple of years of marriage were always like the most tenuous and the most difficult to get through. In my case, I got married in 2012. So we started this, we've been together for many years. And it hasn't been great. I mean, there have been many, this has not been, I can look back at all of the years that we've been married, and there's some good years and there's some bad years where we're just like at each other's throats a lot. This will go down, I think, as not a great year. This will have been a year where we were not simpatico, not on the same page. But I think it's easier for those of us who have been together longer, because we can kind of look at the history of our relationship and see the ups and downs. I think when you're just starting out, you don't know whether this is the norm, whether this is going to be life for you forever. And I can imagine that being really terrifying and feeling like you just need to escape because it's just so unpleasant,
Yeah, because when you're first married, suddenly you're like on the longest date ever, and you're just with this person all the time. In this situation, certainly with coronavirus, you're suddenly quarantined with this person, and you don't have, in the same way, the same other outlets for whatever it is. If you want to just have a conversation with one of your girlfriends, it's not always the same because you can't get together in person. And I think that it's important to put that in perspective. And also, you have these other layers. You have the homeschooling children. You have the fact that, you're not only, if you're not experiencing financial strain yet, you worry about experiencing financial strain. And we know that money is something that couples very often do split up over. So now this conversation has been amplified. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, I think that it's just like the perfect storm of stress, right? Like, so something as simple as like figuring out like groceries, like, how are you going to pay more to have groceries delivered? Like, just there are all of these cost considerations that you're beginning to talk about as a couple now that maybe you weren't really thinking about before. And it's the little things that will kill a relationship, right? Like, it's the slow buildup of being annoyed at your partner because he did this one thing in the morning. And then, and then as the day goes on, you like can't put it behind you. It's that is the reality of relationships, right? And it's hard. And I mean, you're talking about parenting too. I mean, I think, now, historically in the past, my husband and I split up our parenting responsibilities, right? Because one of us would go out for a walk and the other person would be the parent at home and look after our child. I would go off on a business trip and, my husband would be in charge of watching our daughter. Now we're co-parenting all the time and we don't always agree about, the best way to deal with a situation, right? And yeah, it's just scrutinizing each other's behavior all the time is just not a healthy situation to be in.
No, it is not a healthy situation. And it's interesting. I think we did put a question out to our Instagram audience. I was very surprised at the answer. And I can only put it in some context that the study that was in this New York Post article, that data is from March through June. And we did look for more recent pieces. And this was really one of the more recent pieces that I could get in terms of the writing coming out. Now we asked them on Instagram, has your relationship gotten better or worse through the pandemic? So it was up 34% kind of in the initial phase of the pandemic. Now we're kind of moving through to this new normal phase. What do you think our audience said?
I can imagine that if people have kind of gotten through the worst of it and adapted to the new situation, that they might be kind of getting to a point where their relationship is even stronger, but if they made it through it. So I think it's possible that 6 months in, those that have not already divorced are feeling pretty good. I don't know. That's my hypothesis. Was that?
You totally nailed it, because that's what I was kind of thinking. I was really surprised. We did get a pretty good amount of people voting, and we did have 90% said their relationship has gotten better through the pandemic. And I do think there's something to be said for that, because when you go through difficult experiences, it either breaks you or makes you stronger, which is probably some songline somewhere, right? That I'm missing, but it kind of is true, because if you didn't get divorced in the sort of first wave, maybe you're realizing how compatible you are, that you can get through this together and be a support for each other. So I think that's a nice sentiment. Hold that thought. I just want to give everybody some tips. If you are a business owner, things have gotten, not only are relationships hard, but running a business is very hard in a pandemic. So it's important that we not make it any harder on ourselves than necessary. QuickBooks, spreadsheets, they slow you down sometimes. So you can upgrade now to NetSuite. You don't have to pay for multiple systems that don't give you the information you need. You can upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. It is the world's #1 cloud business system, giving you visibility and control over your financials, HR, inventory, e-commerce, and more. Everything you need in one place instantaneously. Whether you're doing $1 million or hundreds of million in revenue, you can save time and money with NetSuite. So everybody, join the over 21,000 companies using NetSuite right now. Let NetSuite show you how they'll benefit your business with a free product tour at netsuite.com/MWF. You can schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/MWF. That's netsuite.com/MWF. It is time for takeaways, my friend. What's your takeaway for our listeners here?
So one interesting thing that I learned is that for many couples who were on the verge of divorce and just decided to stick it out, right? They just decided to suck up all of their anxieties, just barrel through it. They compared that group to people who actually did get divorced.
Right.
And what we found is that people several years later, 5 years later, the couple that actually stayed together through that tough time actually felt like happier generally with their relationship and just with their life, right? And the people who split up, that created new problems, right? So maybe they quickly, got rid of one big issue in their life, but then they had to deal with all of the kind of ripple effects of ending that relationship. And so what I've taken away from that is that there are times, and based as well on the conversation that we've just had, is that sometimes when things are really, really bad, it might make sense to just kind of figure out a way to barrel through it, to just give yourself like a few more months to just like kind of work your way through this and see how you feel on that other side. Because I think for a lot of people, it's when you're so overwhelmed and you're feeling all of these emotions, it feels like the easiest thing to do and the best thing to do is just to end things without realizing all of the ripple effects, financial and otherwise, that will happen because of the divorce that you're not seeing right now, because all you want is to get out, right? So I think that's my takeaway from this, that when things feel really bad right now, it might, obviously there are situations where that's not true. If there's abuse or anything really horrible going on, definitely, don't follow this. But if you're just like really unhappy with your partner right now, it might make sense to just kind of hold on a little bit just to see how you feel in a few months.
I think that's really wise. And I like the fact that you do bring up that there is a huge financial cost, because this show is called Money with Friends. There is a huge financial cost to divorce. And it is something that, of course, if in your heart, this is something you have to do, of course, do what's right for you. But, these stats, they don't just represent heartbreak and disappointment. They're also another data point in economic damage during the coronavirus that it has caused. The newlywed stat was especially troubling. I mean, you talked about how fragile new relationships are. Relationships need time to mature. They may have had a better shot had they not been newlyweds. My wish to all of those coming out on the other side, focus on creating a firm solo economic foundation for yourself. This means for the people that are newly single. So you'll be much stronger heading into your next relationship, and hopefully it won't be with coronavirus as yet another thing, another obstacle to overcome. Liz, thank you so much for being part of this show. We're so looking forward to having you back again over the next few months. And also the Rocket Years, everybody. Please get a copy of this. Liz, tell us more quickly about the book, because we didn't talk about it at the top of the show, and where people can be in touch with you.
Totally. It's called The Rocket Years, How Your 20s Launch the Rest of Your Life. It's designed for people who are in their 20s, thinking about the decisions that they're making in that decade. But it's also for those of us who are not in our 20s and want to kind of reconnect with the ambitions and the passions we had when we were young and how they shape the life we now have. So it's really for people of lots of different ages. You can pick it up on Amazon or at your local independent bookstore. And you can also find me at Liz Segran on all the socials, on Instagram and on Twitter, and come say hi.
Definitely follow her. She has a great, great social media presence, and you can learn more about Liz and all of our other, I have marble mouth now, all of our other thought leaders for the current season on the moneywithfriendspodcast.com webpage. And also please be part of our surveys on our Instagram page at MoneyFriendsPod. That is also our handle on Twitter. And you can watch our behind the scenes tapings of our episodes on our YouTube page. Just go to YouTube and search for Money with Friends. Liz, thank you. We look forward to seeing you back in 4 weeks.
Can't wait. Bye.
All right. Bye, everyone.